Hey everybody, it's Julia Kavanaugh and
I'm Nancy Ham.
welcome to Postpartum Perspectives, the place to come to hear all things newborn care and postpartum related.
We hope you enjoy the following podcast.
Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're exploring newborn stem cell banking,
Oh, yeah.
and we're going way beyond the basics this time.
Okay.
We've got some fascinating research to dig into, including this paper titled The Future State of Newborn Stem Cell Banking. So get ready to rethink what you know about those powerful cells.
It is really amazing how this field has just completely changed.
Yeah.
We've gone from like cord blood being medical waste to,
Right.
a resource with like almost limitless potential.
It's true. This paper we're looking at starts by taking us all the way back to 1988,
Wow.
the year of the first successful cord blood transplant.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being the doctors who made that happen?
Oh my gosh.
That was huge.
Yeah, it was a total breakthrough. Before that, they just tossed the cord blood.
Really?
Yeah, it was just medical waste. And then that first transplant,
Wow.
it proved that cord blood could actually rebuild a patient's entire blood and immune system.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And so fast forward to today, and we've got millions of cord blood units stored all over the world
Yeah.
in public and private banks.
Huh.
But here's where it gets a little strange.
Okay.
This paper highlights a pretty shocking stat.
Okay.
Less than 1%
Wow.
of publicly banked units are ever actually used for transplants.
Wow. That's really low.
Right.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder about, the whole idea of public cord blood banking.
Right.
If so few units are actually being used,
Yeah.
it raises some pretty big questions about the cost and all that.
Totally. It challenges the whole like conventional wisdom about public cord blood banking.
Uh-huh.
If so few units are being used, then are those resources being used as well as they could be?
It makes you think maybe they could be better used somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe focused on expanding the use of cord blood for other therapies.
Right. Because the potential goes way beyond traditional transplants.
Totally. It does. We're seeing these incredible advancements in regenerative medicine,
right.
using cord blood to treat cerebral palsy, autism spectrum disorder,
Yeah.
even hearing loss. It's crazy.
It's amazing. It's mind-blowing.
Have you heard about these futuristic haplobanks of iPSCs?
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like sci-fi, but it's becoming a reality.
It does. It really does.
It's wild.
It's this idea of creating like banks of these iPSCs from cord blood units
Mm-hmm.
that would be a genetic match for like a huge chunk of the population.
Wow.
So imagine having this readily available source of cells that could be tailored to treat almost anything.
That would change everything.
It's pretty revolutionary.
So we've got these huge public banks with like super low utilization rates.
Right.
And then we have this potential for like truly personalized medicine
Yeah.
just waiting to be unlocked.
Mhm.
It seems like the industry is kind of at a crossroads.
Oh, it definitely is. This paper argues that both public and private banks need to adapt if they want to survive.
I see.
Public banks might need to rethink their whole approach
Yeah.
and explore new ways to bring in money.
Okay.
But private banks, they have the flexibility to invest in the newest technology and offer more advanced therapies like CAR T-cell therapy.
Let's talk about CRT for a minute, because I think a lot of people hear that term,
Okay.
but they don't actually know what it means.
Yeah.
How does it actually work?
Okay, so basically scientists take a patient's own immune cells,
Okay.
T cells, and they genetically modify them to target and destroy cancer cells.
Wow.
And get this, you can use cord blood as a source for those T cells.
So instead of a bone marrow transplant,
Right.
you could use cord blood to make these cancer-fighting supercells.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's a less invasive procedure.
Wow.
And the cells are already there, ready to go if they've been banked.
So it seems like private banks are really in a good position
Yeah.
to use these new technologies.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the public banks?
Right.
How can they keep up? Yeah, how can they stay relevant in this rapidly changing landscape? I think they need to find ways to be more than just storage facilities.
Okay.
Maybe they could partner with research institutions
Yeah.
to help develop new therapies using cord blood. Or they could focus on creating those haplobanks we talked about
Uh-huh.
and become like centers for personalized medicine.
That would be a huge change.
It would be a big shift, but it could be the key to their survival.
It sounds like they need to evolve.
Yeah, they need to evolve from being simply repositories of cord blood to becoming like active players in the future of medicine.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a really insightful look at the world of newborn stem cell banking.
Yeah.
But there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to talk about.
Okay.
The business side of things.
Right.
This is an industry after all, and understanding how it works is crucial for making informed decisions.
I agree.
So stick with us, and after a quick break, we'll explore the financial side of cord blood banking, both for public and private banks.
Sounds good.
So we were talking about how public and private cord blood banks are kind of adapting to all these advancements in stem cell research. And it's really cool to see how private banks are embracing new technology and like
Oh, yeah.
expanding their services. You mentioned that they're offering storage for other newborn tissues now.
Yeah, like the placenta and umbilical cord tissue.
Why is that such a big deal?
So these tissues, they have a different type of stem cell
Okay.
called mesenchymal stem cells, or MSCs.
MSCs, okay.
Yeah, and unlike the stem cells you find in cord blood,
Okay.
MSCs can actually turn into a bunch of different cell types, like bone cartilage, even muscle cells.
Wow, so it's like having a backup supply of building blocks for your body.
Exactly. And the research on MSCs is like super promising.
Oh, wow.
They've shown potential in treating things like autoimmune diseases, heart disease, even spinal cord injuries.
That's amazing.
It's pretty incredible.
So storing these extra tissues sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. It's definitely something to think about as we learn more about like all the things these different stem cell types can do.
Yeah.
Having like a bunch of different tissues stored could be really valuable.
It's like diversifying your portfolio, but for your health.
Exactly.
But it's not just about storing more tissue, right?
Right.
Private banks are finding new ways to actually use those cells.
Yeah.
We talked about CAR T-cell therapy, but what other cool stuff is coming up?
Well, one area that's really interesting is this idea of expanding the number of stem cells you can get from one cord blood unit.
Oh, wow.
This could be huge, especially for adults who need larger doses for transplants.
So instead of just storing the cells,
Yeah,
they're finding ways to actually multiply them.
pretty much. It's brilliant.
That is brilliant.
And it could really help public cord blood banks, too.
How so?
Well, remember how we talked about how less than 1% of stored units are actually used?
Yeah.
One reason for that is because there just aren't that many cells in each unit. But if we can multiply those cells, it could make public banks way more useful.
Oh, I see.
And it would make it more likely that those stored units actually get used.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It seems like private banks are also leading the way with iPSCs,
They are, yeah.
those master cells that can turn into any cell in the body.
It's really opening up a whole new world of possibilities for personalized medicine.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. Imagine being able to use someone's own cord blood to create therapies for like anything.
It's like having a medical time machine.
Yeah. You store your baby's cells, and then years later you can use them to create treatments just for them.
That's amazing.
And while we're not totally there yet, the research is moving super fast.
I bet.
We're already seeing clinical trials using iPSCs to treat macular degeneration, Parkinson's, even spinal cord injuries.
Wow.
It's incredible.
So with all this talk about private banks and personalized medicine,
Yeah,
what happens to public cord blood banks?
right.
Do they just disappear?
It's a good question. Public banks are definitely facing challenges, with limited funding and low utilization rates. But I don't think they're going to go away completely.
Okay.
They're still super important for people who can't afford private banking or who need a transplant from an unrelated donor.
I see.
So they have a role to play.
So how can they adapt when private banks seem to be making all the big moves?
I think they need to collaborate more.
Okay.
Partner with research institutions, private companies, even other public banks that would give them access to the resources and knowledge they need to stay competitive.
I see.
Like maybe they could focus on building those hack-low banks we talked about,
Uh-huh.
become centers for iPSC development and distribution.
That would be a big change for them.
It would, but it could be huge.
It sounds like they need to be more than just storage facilities.
They do. They need to become real players in the future of medicine.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
This has been such a fascinating look at the world of newborn stem cell banking.
it really has.
But there's one more thing we need to talk about.
Okay.
The business side of things.
Right.
I mean, this is an industry.
Yeah.
And we need to understand how it works
Absolutely.
to make good decisions.
It's super important.
So we'll be right back, and we'll dive into the financial stuff.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been talking about all these amazing advancements in newborn stem cell banking,
Yeah.
but we need to be real.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole business side to this.
Right. At the end of the day, it is an industry.
Yeah,
So it's really important to understand how it all works financially.
exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start with private banks. Their business model seems pretty simple.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Families pay a fee, and then the cord blood's collected and stored.
Right.
But what are we talking about cost-wise?
Well, the initial costs can be anywhere from like $1,000 to several thousand.
Okay.
It really depends on the company and like what services they offer.
Got it.
Some companies let you do payment plans to make it easier.
Yeah.
And some want you to pay everything all at once.
So there's a range of options.
Exactly.
And then on top of that, there are yearly storage fees, right?
Yeah, those fees can vary, but usually it's like a couple $100 a year for long-term storage.
Okay, so it's not exactly cheap.
Right. It's an investment.
Families really need to weigh those costs against the potential benefits.
Exactly. And like we've been talking about, those benefits are still evolving.
That's true.
So it's really important for families to do their homework.
Yeah.
You know, ask questions about the company's history, the safety of the storage, and like how likely is it that they'll even need to use the cord blood?
That's a great point. It's a big decision.
Yeah,
And you want to make sure you're making the right call for your family.
definitely.
Now, what about public banks? How do they get funding?
So public banks rely on a mix of things.
Okay.
Government funding, grants, donations.
Got it.
And like we've talked about, they're facing some money problems.
Yeah.
It costs a lot to collect, process, and store the cord blood. And with low utilization rates, it's hard to justify spending all that money.
It's like having a giant library
Yeah.
with millions of books, but nobody's checking them out.
Right. That's a perfect analogy.
It makes you wonder if there's a better way.
Yeah.
We talked about public banks maybe working with research institutions or private companies.
Right.
Could that help them financially?
It definitely could. By teaming up, they could share resources, just have more expertise, and maybe even bring in some extra cash.
I see.
Like maybe they could let researchers use their cord blood or work with biotech companies to develop new cell therapies.
So they have to think outside the box a little.
They do. Yeah. They can't just wait for someone to hand them money.
They've got to be proactive.
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds like the future of public cord blood banking depends on them showing everyone how important it is.
I think so. They need to prove the value to the medical world and to society as a whole.
This has been such a fascinating look at newborn stem cell banking.
It really has.
I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too.
And as these technologies keep getting better,
Yeah,
the business side of things is only going to get more complicated.
absolutely. We're going to see new companies pop up, new services, and totally new ways of doing business.
It's an exciting time to be following this field.
It really is.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into newborn stem cell banking.
Wow.
It's been a great discussion,
It has.
and hopefully it's given you a lot to think about.
Yeah.
It's a field with so much potential, but it's important to consider the science, the ethics, and of course the money before making any big decisions.
I totally agree.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.